Arthur Conan Doyle, The Study in Scarlet. Chapter 4. What John Rance Had to Tell. It was 1 o'clock when we left number 3 Lauriston Gardens. Sherlock Holmes took me to the nearest telegraph office, where he sent a long telegram. Then he called a cab and told the driver to take us to the address that Lestrade had given us. "There is nothing better than direct evidence," he said. "In fact, I have already decided what I think about this case, but we should learn everything we can." "You surprise me, Holmes," I said. "Surely you cannot be as certain as you sounded about all those details you spoke about." "There is no possibility of a mistake," he replied. "The first thing I saw when we arrived was that a cab had left 2 deep wheel marks near the side of the road. It had not rained for a week before last night, so those wheel marks must have been made during the night. I also saw the marks of the horse's hooves. One of them was much clearer than the others, which showed that one horseshoe was new. Since the cab came after the rain started, and since it was not there in the morning, I have Gregson's word for that. It means that it arrived during the night. So it must have brought those 2 men to the house." "That sounds simple," I said. "But how did you know the height of the other man?" "In most cases," he answered, "you can discover a man's height from the length of his steps. It is a simple calculation. But I will not bother you with the numbers. I measured his steps in the wet clay outside and in the dust inside the house. I also checked my result in another way. When a man writes on a wall, he usually writes at the level of his eyes. The writing was a little more than 6 feet above the ground. It was very easy to calculate." "And his age?" I asked. "Well," he said, "if a man can take a step of 4.5 feet without difficulty, he cannot be old and weak. That was the width of a puddle on the garden path that he clearly crossed. The man with shiny leather shoes walked around it, but the man with square-toed boots jumped over it. There is no mystery in this. I am only using in real life the rules of observation and deduction that I explained in my article. Is there anything else that confuses you?" "The fingernails and the Trichinopoly cigar," I said. "The writing on the wall was made with a man's finger dipped in blood," Holmes continued. "With my magnifying glass, I saw that the plaster was slightly scratched. That would not have happened if the man's fingernail had been short. I also picked up some ash from the floor. It was dark and flaky, exactly the kind of ash that comes from a Trichinopoly cigar. I have studied cigar ash very carefully. In fact, I have written an article about it. I believe I can recognize the ash of any known cigar or tobacco immediately. It is in small details like this that a good detective is different from men like Gregson and Lestrade." "And the red face?" I asked. "That was a more daring guess," he replied. "But I am quite sure I was correct. You must not ask me about that yet." I put my hand on my forehead. "My thoughts are confused," I said. "The more I think about it, the more mysterious it seems. How did these 2 men, if there were really 2, get into an empty house? What happened to the cab driver who brought them? How could one man make another man take poison? Where did all the blood come from? What was the murderer's aim if nothing was stolen? How did a woman's wedding ring come to be there? And most of all, why did the second man write the German word Rach before he left? I truly cannot understand how all these facts connect." My companion smiled, and he looked pleased. "You have described the problems very clearly," he said. "There is still a lot that is not clear, although I have already decided about the main facts. As for poor Lestrade's discovery, it was only a trick to send the police in the wrong direction, towards secret societies and political groups. It was not written by a German. If you noticed, the letter A was written in what people believe is a German style. But a real German always writes it in the usual Latin way. This proves that the word was written by someone pretending to be German, and not doing it well. It was only meant to confuse the investigation. I will not tell you much more about the case now, he continued. A magician loses his mystery when he explains his tricks. If I show you too much of my method, you may think that I am actually a very ordinary man. I will never think that, I answered. You have made detective work almost an exact science. My companion blushed a little at my words, and at the serious way I spoke. I had already seen that he was as sensitive to praise about his work as a young woman might be about her appearance. I will tell you one more thing, he said. The man with shiny boots and the man with square-toed boots came in the same cab. They walked down the garden path together in a friendly way, probably arm in arm. When they were inside the house, they walked up and down the room, or rather, the man with shiny boots stayed in one place, while the man with square-toed boots walked back and forth. I could see all that from the dust on the floor. I also saw that while he was walking, he became more and more excited. This was clear from the way his steps grew longer. He was talking the whole time and making himself angrier and angrier. Then the tragedy took place. That is all I know for certain. The rest is only guessing. Still, we have a strong starting point. And now we must hurry, because I want to go to Hala's concert this afternoon to hear Norman Neruda. We were having this conversation while our cab was driving through a long line of dull streets and dark back roads. In the darkest and most depressing one of all, the driver suddenly stopped. "That is Audley Court in there," he said, pointing to a narrow entrance between rows of dirty brick houses. "I will wait here for you." Audley Court was not a nice place. The narrow passage led to a small square covered with stone and surrounded by poor, worn houses. We walked carefully between groups of dirty children and lines of gray washing hanging above us until we reached number 46. On the door, there was a small brass plate with the name Rance written on it. When we asked for him, we were told that the policeman was still in bed. We were taken into a small front room to wait. He came in soon after, looking annoyed because he had been woken up. "I have already given my report at the station," he said. Holmes took a half-sovereign from his pocket and slowly turned the coin in his fingers. "We would like to hear the story from you yourself," he said. "I will be glad to tell you anything I know," the constable replied, keeping his eyes on the small gold coin. "Then please tell us everything exactly as it happened," said Holmes. Rance sat down on the hard sofa and frowned as he thought carefully, clearly wanting to miss nothing as he began his story. "I will start from the beginning," he said. "My duty is from 10 at night until 6 in the morning. At 11 there was a fight at the White Hart, but except for that, everything was quiet on my route. At 1 o'clock it began to rain, and I met Harry Murcher. He works in the Holland Grove area. We stood together at the corner of Henrietta Street and talked for a short time. Then, about 2 o'clock or a little later, I decided to walk along Brixton Road to check that all was well. It was very muddy and lonely. I did not see a single person, although 1 or 2 cabs passed me. I was walking along and thinking how good a glass of hot gin would be, when suddenly I saw a light in the window of that same house. I knew that the 2 houses in Lauriston Gardens were empty because the owner refused to repair the drains. The last tenant who lived in one of them had died of typhoid fever. So when I saw the light, I understood that something was wrong. When I reached the door, "You stopped and walked back to the garden gate," Sherlock Holmes interrupted. "Why did you do that?" Rance jumped and looked at Holmes with great surprise. "That is true, sir," he said. "But how you know that, I cannot understand. When I came to the door, it was so quiet and lonely that I thought it might be wiser not to go in alone. I am not afraid of any living person, but I began to think about the man who died of typhoid, and I imagined him walking around because of the bad drains. That idea made me uncomfortable, so I went back to the gate to see if I could see Murcher's lantern. But there was no sign of him, or of anyone else. "There was no one in the street?" asked Holmes. "Not a living soul, sir, not even a dog." Then I made myself brave, went back, and pushed the door open. Everything was quiet inside, so I went into the room where the light was burning. There was a candle burning on the mantelpiece, a red wax candle, and in its light I saw— "Yes, I know what you saw," said Holmes calmly. "You walked around the room several times. Then you knelt beside the body. Then you went through and tried the kitchen door, and then—" John Rance jumped to his feet, with fear and suspicion on his face. "Where were you hiding to see all that?" he cried. "It seems to me that you know much more than you should." Holmes laughed and pushed his card across the table. "Do not arrest me for the murder," he said lightly. "I am one of the hunting dogs, not the wolf. Mr. Gregson or Mr. Lestrade can answer for that. Please continue. What did you do next?" Rance sat down again, though he still looked confused. "I went back to the gate and blew my whistle. That brought Murcher and 2 other officers." "Was the street still empty then?" Holmes asked. "Well, it was empty. At least there was no one useful," said the constable. "What do you mean?" asked Holmes. The man smiled widely. "I have seen many drunk men in my life," he said, "but I never saw anyone as drunk as that man. He was standing by the gate when I came out, leaning against the railings and singing loudly about Columbine's newfangled banner or something like that. He could hardly stand, and he was certainly no help." "What sort of man was he?" asked Sherlock Holmes. John Rance looked annoyed at the question. "He was simply very drunk," he said. "If we had not been so busy, he would have spent the night at the police station." "His face, his clothes, did you notice them?" Holmes asked quickly. "Of course I did," Rance answered. "I had to hold him up, Murcher and I together. He was a tall man with a red face, and the lower part of it was covered—" "That is enough," Holmes interrupted. "What happened to him after that?" "We had enough work without worrying about him," the policeman said angrily. "I suppose he went home somehow." "What was he wearing?" Holmes asked. "He was wearing a brown overcoat." "Did he have a whip in his hand?" "No, he did not have a whip. He must have dropped it," Holmes said quietly to himself. "Did you see or hear a cab after that?" "No." "There is a half-sovereign for you," said Holmes as he stood up and put on his hat. "I am afraid, Rance, that you will never go very far in the police force. Your head should be used for thinking, not only for wearing a helmet. You could have earned your sergeant's stripes last night. The man you are holding is the man we are searching for, the man who has the key to this whole mystery. There is no use arguing about it now. I tell you that it is true. Come, Doctor." We left together, and the constable remained standing behind us, looking doubtful and worried. "That foolish fellow," Holmes said angrily as we drove back to our rooms. "To think that he had such amazing luck and did not use it." "I am still a little confused," I said. "It is true that the description matches your idea of the second man. But why would he come back to the house after leaving it? Criminals do not usually do that." "The ring," Holmes answered. "The ring. That is why he returned. If we have no other way to catch him, we can always use the ring as bait. I will catch him, Doctor. I will bet you 2-to-1 that I do. And I must thank you. If you had not been with me, I might not have gone out at all and would have missed the most interesting case I have ever studied. A study in Scarlet. Is that not a good name? Why should we not use a little artistic language?" There is a red thread of murder running through the dull cloth of life, and our job is to find it, pull it out, and show it clearly. And now, first lunch, and then we will go to hear Norman Neruda. Her playing is beautiful. What is that small piece by Chopin that she plays so well? Tra-la-la-lira-lira-lay. He leaned back in the cab, and this unusual detective sang happily like a bird, while I thought about the many different sides of the human mind.